Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rajul Kansal. I'm your host for the day today. Uh, we welcome you to this special event. We have Maria from Ken Blanchard Companies, Hong Kong. We have Mr. Yogesh Sood, who's the CMD of our organization, Blanchard India and South Asia. So Maria and Yogesh will be the hosts for the day today, where Maria will present to you the subject. With help of Yogesh, we'll try to understand that better and decipher the meaning of what servant leadership is and what does it mean in our context. So if we are able to create an effective and sustainable leadership culture in our organizations based on the very foundation of servant leadership, what does it mean and how do we see that in action is what we will discover today. So in that journey, we will have the help of Mr. Amar Vijay Tandur. Amar heads the brand. Amar is the brand head for Blanchard India and South Asia. I am also doing my bit in the brand. So we have an august company of the CHROs, CEOs, and CXOs of very reputed companies in India. So Maria, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much, Yogesh. Thank you very much, sir, for the time that you've spaced out for this important meeting. With that, I hand it over to you, Maria. So if you can see Maria, she's the head of learning and organizational development. She is a professional services provider from the Ken Blanchard Companies. She manages the business for APAC. If we could move to
Yeah,
Yogesh's
sorry.
profile, please. I'm so sorry. So, as I shared with you, Mr. Yogesh Sood, he is the chairman and managing director of Blanchard International India, and also the larger group, which is the BYLD group. We have multiple brands here. We are also a conglomerate of one of the largest content providers in the world. So, in this part of the hemisphere, or for that matter, any area of the world, you will not find a group which has a more comprehensive uh, conglomerate of biggest content providers in the world. So we represent the BYLD group and we are the hosts for this session today. So Maria, with that, I hand it over to Yogesh sir. And Yogesh sir, if we could take the agenda for the day and set the context as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Rajul, for setting up the context. And as you said, it is going to be teamwork from our side. So we'll be trying to look into what are the various dimensions of servant leadership and, of course, how it applies and plays out in real life. In fact, just before starting this webinar, when we planned it a couple of weeks ago, we did a quick dipstick with some leaders and very senior leaders, asking them, what does servant leadership mean to them? And believe you me, we heard 10 different versions from 12 of them. So we thought that, yeah, it's an interesting topic to talk about because not only this is an interesting topic from content point of view, but there's a strong need to converge thoughts on this very important point or important subject. And that's why we thought that there's a huge need for put some webinar like this into place where we can bring in some research, bring in some own introductions from our own side in terms of concepts, and also bring in Maria, who is an expert, as Rajul said, and is directly involved into research and make her share our perspective. So welcome to all of you. I see many old friends, many clients, many senior colleagues, and of course, many of us know you, you know us. Ashish Chavla from ST Micro, I just saw him logging in. Now I know him from 20 years. Oswald Group, we worked for many years. Bridge has been there for almost 2 decades with us. So welcome to all of you. This is a great, we're going to have a lot of fun together. So let's look at what we're going to talk about today. Servant leadership in action. Before we go into what servant leadership is, we need to know why we are doing this, because it has got very important implications for us if we are acting as servant leaders or if we are not acting as servant leaders. And more so in today's time, where it helps us to create effective and sustainable cultures, because it has got a direct impact on the culture. If we are able to understand it, if we are able to implement it, it has got huge positive impact on the cultures we create. Because today, if you look at, there's a leadership crisis going on all around us. This COVID-19 has put everything into disarray. And there's lots and lots of challenges we are leaders are facing at various levels. Whether I'm sitting on the board or I'm a front-end leader, there are a lot of crises is happening in our lives, personal lives, professional lives. And it's becoming difficult for people to decide whether to stay at home or go out. So personal leadership crisis is there, professional leadership crisis is happening. Then what is servant leadership? As I said earlier, We asked 12 people, we got 10 different answers. Two of them were common. And we thought that what it is, it need to be explained in a more convergent way. And servant leadership, if you look at, these are two very different words. One is servant and one is leadership. And of course, Maria will go into more details, but on the face of it, they look very contradictory to each other, a servant and a leader. And that's what the beauty of these two words when put together are, we are going to explore together. And how do we put into action? Do I become a servant? Do I become a leader? Or I can become both at the same time? Where do we go with that? But if I want to get into that, if I want to become that, what are the likely obstacles on the way? What are the likely challenges? What are the likely hindrances? And that's what we talk about, overcoming obstacles. And look at how I can be more successful servant leader. And then we support your success means that we are here not only to share a concept or our research or our thinking or volumes of white papers which we have written across the globe, but also how you can implement it in your personal life, in your own organization. And that's what if Maria can go to the next slide, the context is going to be, what does it mean to be servant leadership as an individual? And it's a very, very powerful and reflective question to ask. When we ask this question, there are so many answers which pop up in our mind that they're linked to our own experiences, our own understanding, and particularly in this part of the world, when you look at the word servant, we tend to look at someone who is junior, who is someone serving me, who is maybe a domestic help to me, and those are the kind of connotations we attach to that. So what does it mean to be individually at individual level to be a servant leader and servant leader? Then one-on-one, if I'm able to implement it at personal level, how does it play out on one-on-one? And that's the most important part. I can tell you, my friends, and you're all there in this webinar from their own experience, from their own background, and successful entrepreneurs, successful leaders. But when it comes to one-on-one, the internal dilemma of combining the two, a servant and a leader, is a very, very difficult game, because we need to change so many things. We need to, first of all, we need to shatter our own thinking around this. Then, of course, how does it play out in teams? So the scope is increasing. I'm becoming an individual servant leader, then one-on-one, then going into team, and it cascades like that. More so if I'm a senior leader in the organization, if I'm leading the senior leadership team, and how does it play out at the organizational level? And if I'm able to do that, if you see at each and every step, I'm creating a cultural impact from left to right on this slide, from individual to organization. If I'm able to build in that culture, or do that, or behave that at different levels, people are looking at it in a convergent fashion, we can create a huge organization which is full of servant leaders, and not the servants and the leaders, but servant leaders. And that's the point Maria is going to explore and share her thoughts as we go forward. Thank you, Maria. Over to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So
Thank you,
Maria,
Yogesh. Yes.
just a small point, just a small point of reference to all of you before we pass it on to Maria. There are two aspects to this discussion. One is, I'm sure we all have attended a few meetings where keeping the video on was a requirement. It may not be really that big a requirement in this event. So our request is that we will switch off our videos if at all they are on. And I'll start doing that as well immediately. The second is that we have put you on mute. Right now, we are going to understand the concept being shared by Maria. At the end of this session will come the question and answer round. I am keeping a tab of what you are going to ask at each level in the chat. If you have any questions, please mark it here in the chat. I will try my best to ask all the questions, get all of them answered. But I can assure you all the questions will definitely get answered through, if not in the session, but then through an email. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I'm keeping a tab of that. Thank you very much for that, Maria, and all over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Britsa.
Thank you. Thanks for
With
doing
that,
this.
I'm switching off my video. Thank you.
Okay. So Yogesh talked about, and very correctly, servant leadership, in terms of research. So as a practitioner, I work for the Ken Blanchard Companies, like Raju was saying. And so I interface with leaders all the time, right? In terms of, providing skills, coaching, and doing organizational change and so forth. And Yogesh said it very correctly, because it takes really a village. But it starts with me. So with this in mind, I'm going to take you through how to actually put the concept into practice in these 4 areas. Now, let's step back a little bit. People have come back to me, and leaders around the world that I work with, they usually ask me these questions. How can I motivate my people to get more engaged at work? How can I become a better leader for my people? I'm trying to coach my people, but they don't really listen to me or share with me what their problems are. And all they talk about is, when do I get my bonus? And then they don't really attain realistic goals, and they're asking for bonus. And they are kind of like not building relationship with me as a leader. And people only come to me when there's a massive problem. Why can't they just come problem so that it doesn't become such a big deal? And there's more. Now, these are actually statements from my clients in coaching. And a lot of times, no matter whether it's senior leadership coaching or operational leadership coaching, on and off, there are these kind of problems and more that are directly related to halting the performance of people in the organization. But at the same time, you are incurring a lot of costs because people start to leave. That relationship with the leader is just not there. Let alone that, you've spent time, you've spent effort, you've spent capital to develop your people, but then they leave. And so there's a big dilemma here where leadership is actually in crisis right now because people are leaving because of the leaders, not necessarily because they want to leave the organization. So with that in mind, let me just give you some information in terms of the research, but also in terms of the trends across board. And when I talk about across board, we're talking about across industries that I work with, across countries that I work with. So at this point, what I've compiled as a presentation for you today, it's not just India, it's really across board based on research and the trends that I've been able to observe so far. So what did I observe so far with years of experience and research? We see that there's, we could conglomerate and cluster them into poor leadership. And so what poor leadership is really doing is that they're not setting clear goals. And they're not aligning their teams to work together, to work cohesively. They don't provide feedback. They are not building trust with their employees. They don't listen. And they don't change or shift their ways of working with people when one particular leadership style is not working for those people that they work with. Because bear in mind, if everybody could just put yourselves in mute, that would be really wonderful. That would be very helpful. Thank you very much. So when people don't know how to be flexible in working with different types of situations, then it's really complicated for people to have a better relationship with that leader. It doesn't mean that the leaders are bad people. It just means that there are poor leadership practices. But a better leadership practice, actually, there's a lot of benefit. And we're talking about reduction of turnover up to 30%. We're talking about improving customer satisfaction up to 4 to 5%. We're talking about improving productivity up to 10%. So there's actually tangible, hardcore measures that are directly related to good leadership. So you know how usually people come to us and say, oh, I need to do some soft skills. But there's actually nothing soft about leadership development because there are tangible, hardcore results that are showing up as an economic impact within the organization. Otherwise, it's going to be cost-oriented. So what I've also seen is that on a day-to-day basis, when you're running the organization, running projects, leading your teams, what people have a tendency to pay attention to when you're a leader is that they're paying a lot of attention on performance evaluation. So I ask people to raise their hands usually. Do you do one-on-ones? People say, yes, I do one-on-ones. Maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe once every 3 months. And I'm like, what do you talk about? And so they're saying, I'm checking people's performance. And I'm like, okay, great. How do you do that? I'm like, well, I'm evaluating them, like performance review. And I'm like, well, that's it. It's performance review. I'm putting a check mark. And then I'm just like, okay, what about the day-to-day coaching? What about performance planning? Because when you do performance planning, day-to-day coaching, observation, you're praising, but you're also giving feedback, then people can improve. Then there are no problems. Then you're working cohesively and collaboratively as a partner with the people that report to you. And so that performance evaluation is going to be more successful. And people are not going to be ending up leaving the organization. So we're really calling this performance management, as you all understand it. But if you look at this chart, based on the surveys that we did in our organization, if you look at the downward arrow in black, it actually says that people actually don't do it properly. And so people that have gone through these separate items of performance planning, day-to-day coaching, performance evaluation, they're complaining that their managers don't do enough properly, or even evidently to a point that is supportive of them. So they're not engaged. So what do poor managers actually cost the organization? They cost a lot to the organization because there are tangible lack of results that show up because of lack of skills on setting goals, on setting organizational objectives and linking it, aligning it back to the individuals. They don't check progress with a benevolent way, in an empathic way, in a supportive way. They are not giving feedback. People actually love feedback, but they don't receive it. So they don't know at the end of the day when you have a bad evaluation, why? Why is that? I thought I did the right thing, but you never aligned with me as my manager. So they don't adjust their leadership styles and they don't listen. And therefore, people are not able to change without training. And what's really tough about not being able to change without training is that, yes, training is really, really important. Coaching is very, very important. Mentoring is very, very important. But if you don't have the mindset and you don't have the willingness to change, no skill is going to help you. So it's really important for us to start paying attention that there is this inner motivation to want to be a better leader, but also there's the skill that you need to learn to be a better leader. So what I've observed is that people are talking a lot around the world, especially in the Western world, about the concept of servant leadership. And so here, Rajul, I would ask for your support in the chat. I'm going to be asking the first question. What does servant leadership really mean for you in your work life? So if you could just put down what does that actually mean for you in your work life on the chat, I would really appreciate it because I'd really like to understand from your side. And I think, Rajul, you probably want to go on unmute yourself. If you could read out some of the notes for me. So, yeah, so service to leaders. So I'm reading service to leaders, to the employees, serving someone, listening, being empathic toward the team members, facilitating team members' discussions, yes. Do not instruct, influence, instead, okay. Serve employees, yeah, so very much people focused. So my second question, having emotional intelligence, love that, thank you so much. What about the second question? What's been the impact of those behaviors for you? If you've utilized them, if you've received them from your leaders, then what's the impact on those behaviors on you? So yeah, so you develop trust. Yes, once you give feedback in a benevolent way, right? You're empowering others, absolutely. You're creating more commitment on your job, yes. You're inspiring others, love that, thank you. Yes, you are creating low resistance, if at all, right? You're inspiring others. Stronger bonding with your people, you're creating accountability on your people, productivity, motivation, excellent, trust and commitment. That's exactly this is all about. But here's the interesting part that Yogesh was saying right at the beginning. If you ask a classroom full of people, you know, what do you think servant leadership is for you? There's no one right answer. But then, why is that? That's really kind of like ambiguous situation here, right? And so we did this, we asked this question to 1,500 people throughout different organizations, professionals, right? So these are MNCs, we surveyed them. And basically they say, these are the key words. Now look at the big words, the big, bold words. It's talking about humble. It's talking about being selfless. It's talking about being empathic, honest, caring, giving direction, listening, others focused, being authentic, being fair, learning. A certain leader learns all the time. It's candid and builds people up, being patient, being collaborative, being available. So being present. So that's really interesting. So this is really what practitioners like yourselves, senior leaders, operational leaders as well, have told us in this group. This is what they desire. This is what people desire for behaviors in their leadership. So I'm going to bring out some research. So research really tells us that, and this is just one of the research, because over the past 30 years, servant leadership is a 40-year-old philosophy by Robert Greenleaf. But then the past 30 years, research has really grown in this area. And, you know, one of the recent research from Delphi, it says, you know, these are some of the behaviors that the Delphi study has talked about, you know, valuing people, empowering people. Again, it's very correlated to humility, listening, building trust, caring, building integrity when you interact with others, collaborating, learning, and really providing unconditional love. Now that's really interesting. I would mark that as well, right? But really serving other people's needs it's what's really relevant here as well. So there's other research, scientific research. Again, they're talking about the antecedents on the left-hand side of the screen. It's talking about you really need to create a culture that generates humility enough in the leadership and authenticity enough in the leadership. Then you could actually accept others interpersonally when you relate to others, empower them, and there's different formats of empowerment, which I will explain later, and also develop people. Because when you deal with these antecedents, and you provide direction and empower people at the same time, then what you're going to be doing is that you're creating on the right-hand side an optimally motivating environment for people to work with you as a leader. And so the results, the good benefits, the good results is actually creating more commitment, empowerment, satisfaction, engagement in the environment that you're working with. And so people start to perform. They're committed and they start to perform because you've just generated an environment as a leader for people to work well with you. And people like that. So they gravitate to you. So what is the definition of a servant leader by Robert Greenleaf about 40 years ago? So he tells us that a servant leader is a servant first. There's a bit of an oxymoron concept, but I'll explain. A servant leader is a servant first. It begins with a natural feeling that one wants to serve first. So that's your core motivation. Then the conscious choice brings in to aspire to lead as a second step of your motivation. And that so that person is sharply different from one that wants to lead first, get the title, get the authority first, and then serve. So what is he saying? He's saying, because I'm so first and foremost motivated to serve others' needs, to make sure that I answer others' needs, to help others groom, help others grow, help others develop, benefit others first, be of service to others first. So automatically, as I serve and I succeed in serving others' needs and they see the benefit of being served by me, automatically these people follow me. Automatically these people want to be influenced by me. Automatically I become that leader that I don't actually need a title for, because I'm already big and influential. But first, it's because of my action of serving, not because I have a title or authority. So servant leadership is not a position power correlated. It's about servitude. It's about being there for others first. And then you create an influencing process that others aspire to be like you, so they follow you. So that's where it comes through, right? But the interesting part about Robert Greenleaf 40 years ago is that he wrote this book on servant leadership, but there are no attached behaviors to it. 10 years later, research started to come through, and they started to put a lot of assessments, put a lot of research, mostly statistical research, and really trying to qualify and quantify what are the key traits of a leader, of a servant leader, and what are the key behaviors. But like Yogesh was saying, it's not just interviewing practitioners. Even in research, there's no concurrent philosophy of how to put it into place. Because I've done a lot of research in reading the papers. I read probably 300 articles on servant leadership, and I found one that had 45 behaviors. And I'm like, whoa, how do you actually implement this stuff into changing a culture? So I was very curious, because I'm a practitioner. Anytime I do research, I want to turn it into practice. So I went and I actually compared and contrasted different leadership styles. So I looked at several leadership style based on the research that is in place right now, comparing to transformational leadership, empathic leadership, authentic leadership, situational leadership, transactional leadership. And there's one thing that servant leadership really stands out that other leadership styles don't stand out as much. At least it's not apparently written in a written format. Servant leadership really tells us in all research that the first driver for a servant leader to be a leader is to serve first. The other leadership styles or leadership theories, they're talking about a good leader is a leader that does good behaviors to help organizations succeed. And when you do good behaviors to help organizations succeed, so you're really focusing on organization success first, then you develop your people. So, and then I started to see that there are a lot of behaviors on these other leadership styles that I just mentioned that are actually integrated with the propensity to serve. So this is where I would like to share more in terms of what we found, as the Ken Blanchard Companies also found in research and in market trends as a practitioner organization. What we found in our surveys recently is that we asked a lot of organizations about how connected they are when they work with each other in terms of people, working with people, leaders and their people. So they're saying that 60% of employees have smartphones, but actually they presumably not as connected with each other. And so people are really not satisfied with the quality of connection, and they feel very disconnected despite that they're so autonomously connected with technology. So we call this dysfunctionally connected workplace around the globe nowadays. We're in 52 countries. And so 28% of this survey tells us that 28% of the people say that they rarely or never discuss their goals. Again, it's the same problem that I shared with you before. 70% say they wish they did. 64% wish they could actually talk to their leader about challenges with their colleagues. So like there's, interrelation issues that they want to talk about it. And it's not just goals. And they want to talk about it, but people don't actually entertain that quality of discussion. Only about 8% do that in our survey. So we're in organizations across board, we're really dramatically dysfunctionally connected. And so this causes a lot of isolation. There's a lot of problems in isolation in organizations nowadays, especially people that work remotely, especially when we're dealing with matrix organizations across different countries, right? There's a lot of us working multinationals. So again, it's the same pattern of mistakes. It's about poor leadership. It's lack of listening. It's, over supervision, under supervision, too much direction or too much delegation, backing off, lacking management skills, leadership skills, but also giving the wrong amount of support, wrong amount of direction, and not holding people accountable. That's a problem because then there's no ownership afterwards. And so people are not giving feedback. They're complaining that they're not receiving feedback from their leaders, not listening, not setting goals, not aligning with people. So let's move a little bit away from what the problem is. Let's really look at when we focus on others, what's in it for us as leaders? We in research, our organization, what we've looked at is that what creates engagement in the organization. And we again interviewed a lot of a big database, and I'll share with you the numbers afterwards. It talks about the intention of perform. People actually say that when we focus on others focus leadership, or servant leadership is the same thing. There's the intent to perform. There's the people want to work harder. They don't want to let you down as a leader. They want to apply themselves, and they provide that discretionary effort. They want to stay in the organization. They want to endorse the organization, say nice things about the organization. They really want to vouch for the organization. And so they become really good corporate citizens. They would help each other. They like coming to work. They feel satisfaction working at work in the organization. So in Blanchard, we've come up with a model of the leadership profit chain. And you've probably heard this leadership profit chain before. The leadership profit chain is all about the research that we did looking at how do we help organizations become vital. And vitality, as you all know this word, is how do we help organizations become healthy, right? Why is that important? Because when we look at organizational vitality, we're really talking about if you are a public organization getting funds from the public, then you're up in NASDAQ or whatever whatever index that you are performing on. Then people are really looking at those share prices. So we're talking about tangible economic results for the organization. That involves that healthy view of your organization. What is the type of leadership, right? So if you go IPO, if you already are in IPO, you're getting public funds, you're Fortune 500. What actually people are really looking at, how much is your organizational worth? They're looking at your shares, your market share. They're looking at who is your leadership. What are your projects? Do you have money to invest? How do you take care of your people and all that kind of stuff? So all that, you've got hard measures, which are the tangible quantitative measures, but you also have the soft measures, which is, are your people showing up at work happy? Are your people talking well of the organization? Or are you actually going to the organization, going to Glassdoor, talking badly of your organization? So there's all that direct, tangible influence, but also the soft measures, right? So what actually creates that healthy organization? It's divided into two types of leadership. Strategic leadership And the strategic leadership, it starts off with the leadership that guides and directs us on the mission, vision, values, strategies of the organization. But then, how do you put it into implementation? You need the operational leadership that translates all that I just spoke about, especially strategic imperatives, into goals, policies, processes, daily interactions and behaviors with the staff members, employees in the organization, through coaching, through mentoring, through guiding, through partnership with your employees. And so the biggest portion that is going to influence, the biggest echelon or hierarchy that is going to influence the culture of the organization is actually operational leadership, because that's actually the mass, critical mass that is going to move the organization in a particular direction. Now, we need to give skills to these people because they're dealing with the employees every day, and they are the kind of like the ham in the sandwich. They will also manage the strategic leadership. And so operational leadership is the one that is going to influence how much employee work passion is going to come out of the employees. Now, employees get work passion when they feel great working with their leaders, when they have the right behaviors at the right moment, when they have problems resolved through the help of their leaders, when they are let alone, when they are experts. And so they show up with the customers, and they would say, you call a customer service and, you're yelling the customer service because, you've talked to them 5 times and they don't solve your problems. So you leave. But, you might get angry. But if you are a customer that is disappointed with a particular service or product, you call the customer service, and this particular customer service frontline person is actually trying their best to solve your problem and taking care of you, holding you in a space where you want to actually come back and forgive them, that's customer devotion. So customers, we've interviewed this portion of people as well, B2C, and they say, I don't mind that a particular service provider or product provider makes a mistake, but just fix my mistakes and keep me there with you. Give me a reason to be there with you. And so therefore, it's actually the employees and the operational leaders that help the employees have not only the skills, but also the mindset to work with the customers and support that growth and that vitality on the organization so that you can actually show up with good numbers and also employees that are on a high satisfaction level. So how do we actually put that into place? When we're talking about strategic leadership, again, we're talking about on a very high level vision and direction. Those are very important because you're creating the purpose and the picture of the future of where you want to take the organization towards. And then you've got to apply them with values and behaviors. With that in mind, you're not an implementer. So you've got to have a bunch of implementers that are operational leadership that takes that forward with the rest of employees. Operational leaders need to be empowered to implement. And if we've got micromanagers on the top level, or managers that don't even explain what is the purpose, the vision, and the values, then these guys can't really get empowered so that they can empower the rest of the employees of the organizations. So what we're suggesting ourselves, based on research that we did on the profit chain, in order for the organization to have that vitality that I tried to explain, is that the leaders that are on a strategic and operational level, you've got to work hand in hand together. But when you work hand in hand together, is that the traditional pyramid of the hierarchy needs to flip upside down. And it flips upside down where the frontline people need to have more empowerment capabilities to serve the customers. Because ultimately, it's the customers actually that pay for your services and your products. So let me explain. And so once you turn the pyramid of the organization upside down, the operational leaders are creating a high-performing organization through achieving that vitality by implementing the clear vision, strategies, and goals through a combination of right amount of direction and support to empower the top echelon. So I've turned the pyramid upside down. So the top now, the base is bigger, which is the rest of your employees who actually work with the clients, work with the customers. So when you have the empowered employees with right direction and support, you can enable them to make decisions to work with those clients and customers and serve them properly. So you're really essentially shifting a culture of an organization when you turn the pyramid upside down. But you need to go and back up a little bit. So basically what we're suggesting is look at the way you are on a daily basis working with your employees. So now I'd like to really get an answer from you on the chat, please. So we're saying that performance management is divided into three things: planning, coaching, and evaluation at the end. So I'd like to ask you on the chat to answer, please. How much time are you putting on in any of these aspects: planning, coaching, and evaluation? And when you put it in there, I'd like to ask you first, how much time do you put on planning, coaching, and evaluating the people that you work with? If you could just put that on the chat, I would really appreciate it.
Maria, Rajul here.
Yes.
I'll just help you read that out. So Adit says 80% evaluation and 20% planning.
Yes,
and none
thank
on
you.
coaching, to be honest.
Yes, yes. Thank you for your honesty. This is the first step of being a fantastic leader. And I'll tell you why in a minute, because it's all about vulnerability, being honest, being transparent, and you're in the right track. Really love that from you. Thank you.
So Devendra Dikshit says evaluating 50-30 coaching and 20 on planning.
Yeah.
Mr. S.K. Jan says planning 50%, coaching 35%, and evaluating 15%.
Yeah.
The gentleman from Motilal Oswal says planning 30%, coaching 50%, and evaluating 20%.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. And then now I have a second follow-up question. That's you, and thank you for your honesty. Now, let's look at the way you observe your organization, your peers, your colleagues that are leading teams. What is the percentage that you would attribute based on your observation? How others in the organization, could be your boss, how others in your organization are attributing the percentages on planning, coaching, and evaluation?
So Dinesh says coaching 50%, planning 30%, and evaluating 20%.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that. Now, here's the thing. You might argue, you know what? Fair enough. I'm doing planning, 80%, and I'm doing evaluation 80%. Now, it really depends on your role as well, right? I give you that, because if you're doing evaluation, then are you on a supporting role, a partner role, like an HR role? Then you're conjointly doing evaluation with the business leader of the team member. Fortune 500s, when I used to work in Fortune 500, there's this 4I principle where you've got the HR doing the evaluation at the same time as a business leader, right? So it depends on the company policy. But then there's other parts where, organizations, you don't have so many people reporting to you, you're an individual contributor. So maybe you're doing more planning rather than coaching, right? Yeah. People don't report to you. And that's the career path that you chose in the organization, because there's two tracks, right? Individual contributor leadership track, but also you've got the, people leadership track. It just depends what you chose. But all in all, if you are a people leader, you should really have a good balanced amount of the three, because it's about daily performance management. It's not about a chore. It's about serving people to succeed so that they build that commitment, that satisfaction, and you as a leader of people are creating an environment that is optimal for them to work in. When it's optimum for them to work in, you create that passion for them to work in the organization, and the organization actually benefits through that. So when we talk about servant leadership, it really embodies as a philosophy, when you want to put it into practice, the mindset and the skill set. The mindset is very much related to your motivation. It's very much related to your attitude, to your willingness to motivate yourself, which is an intrinsic value, right? Motivation is intrinsic. It comes from the heart, to actually be of service to others. So first, you really need to have that mindset. But then the other one is you've got to have the skills. Now, if you don't have the skills, it's okay. We can give it to you. You know, there's a lot of leadership skills companies out there. But the mindset is really the most, first and foremost, the most important thing, because that drives you, right? That's the motivation. So like Yogesh was saying, there are actually 4 areas that we have identified that is important that leaders of any organizations should actually pay attention to. Now, what's really interesting, and this is what I am most interested in, is always, if anybody needs to change, I start with me. I always encourage in coaching for people, I need to change this person, change the organization, start with yourself first. So I would always start on the individual level first. So let's look at how we could start that on the individual level. So I would encourage people to really pay attention to create your personal service vision, which is essentially a statement of who you are, what your strengths are, what your values are, personal core values, and what people can expect of you and what you want to expect of others, and being really transparent about it. So let me take you through a quick process, right? So before we go there, I'd like to ask you, and then put it in the chat, please. Who do you serve when you work? Who are you serving? Could you just put it in the chat? Who are your customers? Raju, if you would be so kind.
Yes, please.
Who are your customers? Who do you serve? So employees, yes.
So there's Deepthi who says it should be organization, but the managers. Devendra says leadership team, employees and customers, finally society.
Yes, employees and customers, yes, and stakeholders.
Quite a lot of them caring employees, my peers, colleagues, stakeholders, multiple stakeholders, all stakeholders, society.
Lovely. Thank you, Raju. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for participating so well. You're absolutely right. It's multiple stakeholders. Very well answered. There is a distinction. So, but you're still serving, right? Because your personal service vision needs to be identified, why you do what you do, and why do you choose the career that you've chosen? Why did you choose the company that you chose? What do you want to serve in the society, and who are your customers, right? And what difference, what impact you want to make? And also, in order to create that impact, who do you want to be working with? And therefore, if you are colleagues with somebody in your organization, how best do you make that greater impact by first and foremost make the internal collaboration actually work and serve others? If my colleague needs my help, I'm not going to say no because it's not within the scope of my job description. So you've got to ask yourself, what mentality do you have, and really challenge any constraints that are holding you back in terms of service. And so what I'm proposing for you to do when you're writing your personal service vision is that you begin with what are your core characteristics. So one of the way of doing this is to find examples of what people have said great things about you. What are you good at? What are your great personality characteristics? So it's what skills as well, your personality. What are some of the successful behaviors that you've demonstrated in the past working with others? So if you don't know, please interview. I did that for myself. I went after people and I proactively asked for a 360 assessment. And then other times I just invited people for a coffee or for a meal. And I said, I'd really like you to talk to me about me, good and bad. And I'm as blunt as that because I want to grow. I really want to grow. So I did that for me. And guess what? People really want to help you. People are good. And so understand your expertise. What are your knowledge that you forget that you have? What are your skills? What are some of the examples that people can tell you what great things you've done in the past? Some successful track record of the way you work with others. And so you've got to create an impact statement of who you want to serve and how you want to serve, based on your skills, based on your characteristics. So some of the one example that I wanted to share with you is, this is a list of core values. And, us coaches, we always find, values to work with. But again, you could just Google a list of values, and then you could have a bigger list to choose from, or come back with some other words. So this is kind of like not carved in stone, but it's just a suggestion. So for me, I actually chose 6 values that I try to every day try to follow and make sure that my behaviors are defined based on these values. So what people expect of you and what you expect of them is the clarity of who you want to be and who you're trying to become, and therefore you're walking your talk when you appear that way. So what I actually did on the left-hand side is I selected those 6 values, and on the right-hand side, I defined them. I put the definition of each of these values in terms of what it means for me, in terms of how I want to behave based on these values. And so when you define the behaviors of each of these values, what's going to happen is that you're going to perform these behaviors, and people actually see you come through that way. And that people start to trust you, because this is who you are. This is how you describe yourself. So it's starting from me, right? So integrity is something that majority of people that I've known tell me that integrity is honesty. For me, integrity is beyond honesty. So therefore, I need to define it for myself. And so integrity for me is really, just as an example, is doing the right thing, even if nobody is watching me. And therefore, I would actually go and perform that way. For example, it could be something very simple and mundane. Somebody throws rubbish, instead of hitting the basket, throws outside on the floor. I would go back and say, you know what, can you pick up your rubbish? So that's integrity. But if that person doesn't pick up the rubbish, I'll go and pick up the rubbish, and then I'll wash my hands afterwards. Because I'm actually impacting people around me if I don't behave with integrity. So you can now see that I've defined it in such a way that is beyond honesty, right? It's not just telling the truth, my truth. So I went ahead and I defined every single behavior. I encourage you to actually do that as well, because then you become the authentic person that you want to become, or you are. And then you've got to write a personal vision statement. And for me, because I know my skills, I've interviewed people about me, what I do so well or what I don't do so well, and I want to become that new me in serving for a greater impact. So this is my statement, my personal service vision is to trust myself, to use my can-do attitude, flexible and business research acumen to mentor and coach others so that they can succeed in being self-directed, self-supported, so that they are self-reliant. And also at the same time, while I'm working with them, I'm inspiring them so that they can create so that I'm creating an environment that is emotionally uplifting for them to work with. And so that they're happy working with each other, not just with me. And so I actually run Asia Pacific, and I have, I am a leader of many consultants, and I work with strategic alliances and partners. And therefore, it's really important that I'm ready to serve their success so that they are upskilled to serve you as customers as well. So then the next level would be to work on the one-on-one level. So if you're a leader that actually leads others, then you really want to create that positive relationship to influence and inspire others to work with you and within your team, right? So first, on a one-on-one level, how do you actually inspire them? Then it's important for us to know, why is it important to inspire them? Because if people come out of a meeting from you And they're saying, wow, this leader is helping me. I just came out of the meeting and I feel like I know how to move forward. I was stuck here, but on this something else that I talked to my leader about, my leader just let me go and said, go ahead, I trust you. So that leader frequently having these beneficial meetings, then the sense of well-being for that employee working with this leader is really positive. Bearing in mind the sense of well-being is actually neutral because it's a state. So the sense of well-being, when it's positive, then that intention to do more, to behave better, to be supportive of the organization, to give discretionary hours and providing results is actually happening. And people won't quit the organization. So the cost of hiring becomes less. The cost of having to hire new, becomes less. And also, those development costs over time also decrease. And then there's succession that you can create in the organization. So the tacit knowledge in the organization actually resonates and stays in the organization. But every year when you've got a higher attrition rate, that tacit knowledge that it's not within a database in the organization disappears. So anytime people leave the organization, knowledge disappears from your organization. That becomes very, very costly as well. So we've got to be careful creating a state that is positive for people to work with you. Because we're talking about creating employee work passion. Now, employee work passion is the day-to-day interaction with leaders and other employees, colleagues, where it creates a positive state and a positive emotional and healthy state of wanting to work in that organization and with the leaders, and that is persistent. It creates a mood, a positive mood on a daily basis. So passion is created on a daily basis, bit by bit. Once you have it accumulated, it becomes engagement. So it's really important that you've got to work with people on creating a positively motivating environment to work with on a daily basis. Therefore, if you only do planning, if you only do evaluation once a month, once every 6 months, you don't do one-on-ones, you don't do the coaching and mentoring when they need it, that interaction, that connection is going to disappear. They're not motivated to work with you. That passion disappears working with you. And so we're human beings, right? We have the limbic, in neuroscience, we have the limbic cord here. So we love to work with, we're social beings. We love to work with connection. So when we don't work with connection, that satisfaction, that positive state does not create passion. And therefore, over time, every day accumulated, you do not get engagement. And therefore, lack of productivity. So that's, that's really it. So what are the drivers of employee work passion? We're talking about caring about your employees, managing the expectations, giving them what they needed as tools to do their jobs, providing roles that are meaningful for them when they see that impact. Some of you said on the chat, I want to serve and make a big impact. I want to serve community. I want to serve the population. I want to serve my colleagues. I want to serve my leader. I want to serve the people that I touch every day. So make it meaningful, make it motivational, but you need to have a conversation with them to see what drives them, right? Because you can't just decide for them. Motivation is intrinsic, so you've got to have a conversation. You've got to improve and develop them, give them skills. So then you're going to be building trust because it's directly related to trust. Let's talk a little bit about trust. When you're talking about trust, it sounds very fluffy, but it's actually not, because trust is the willingness to be vulnerable based on the perceptions, your own perception of if somebody is trustworthiness, has the trustworthiness. And trustworthiness is none other than the ability to work with integrity, show goodness, and reliability. Now, when you're talking about trust, there is actually an element of risk. Because when I say I trust somebody, I'm imparting information that is important to me. So if I trust you and I give you that specific important information for me, you could use it anywhere and however you want to. once I give that information to you, I have no control of it anymore. So trust is, there's an element of risk here. So my question to you is, do you trust your leaders? Do the people that work with you trust you? So it's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer that, but I'd like you to think about that, because this is the both way streets. So where exactly have you gone through situations where you no longer trust others and others no longer trust you? Because we're really looking at this model of ABCD, right? Able, believable, connected, and dependable. So when you look at this particular model, we're really not looking at trust at a subjective manner. We're looking at trust in an objectified manner, where able is talking about, are you competent? That's why I trust you. Are you believable? Are you walking your talk based on your values and how you show up in your behaviors? That's why the personal vision statement is very important. I'm defining my own daily behaviors with my values. That's believable. Walking my talk. Am I connected? Am I caring? Am I empathic? Am I listening? Am I taking care of my people? Am I dependable? Do I actually come on time? Do I answer emails? Do I serve my people and answer, give them the tools to be successful? Those are the 4 elements of trust in this particular model that objectifies trust tangibly. Because trust actually provides that tangible result of productivity or disengagement. So, you can really drill this down, but we're not going to do that in the interest of time. But basically, it's the 4 keywords, 4 letters, A, B, C, D of the trust model that we usually use to make sure that we objectify that trust. Now, trust comes back into how am I working with my people and how do people trust me as a leader, right? So on the personal level, on the one-on-one level, I would encourage you to look at what is the degree of trust that you have with your people and vice versa. But then you've got to expand it to the next level, like Yogesh was saying, right? The next level is you're going to look at your team level. So first and foremost, you're really looking at a one-on-one level, on the individual leading level. But now you're leading on the team level, right? So you've got a team of people. So how do we actually put servant leadership into practice? Again, some of the research that tells us, and this is a combined research that we did, the Ken Blanchard Companies, with the Training magazine in the US. And this is the interesting data. It's an interesting data point. So we found in 2019 that top obstacles for teams to be high performing is that they are disorganized, because there's no clarity on roles, there's no clarity on goals, there's no clarity on purpose, there's no clarity on decision rights, lack of accountability, who owns what are we doing actually, why are we even existing as a team? What kind of a mission are we on? What's the purpose? Poor leadership. And then there's no planning. Here we need a little bit of planning. So only out of the 1,800 people that we interviewed, 27% of that says they felt that their team was high performing. And what about the rest? So this is really low percentage. It's not funny, right? So there's the biggest obstacle of team success to become a high-performing team is actually lack of clarity. What are we doing? That's the lack of clarity. Where are we going? How do we work with each other? So when you manage teams to become high-performing, we need to really pay attention to building blocks. Now, bear in mind, you're serving the team. You're looking at servant leadership, putting into practice on a team level. So you've got to work on the building blocks. We need to understand how teams actually work. The building blocks are, we need to align for results, communicate during the conflict, because we should not, as leaders, avoid conflict. We need to embrace it.
Hi, Eden.
Yes? Sorry? Okay, so if you could just keep yourself on mute, that'd be great. The next building block is to build that cohesion to help the team work well together, right? After conflict. And then you are sustaining the high performance once the high performance is reached. Now, there are obviously, and you probably know that there's the forming, storming, norming, performing stages of team development. But then you're really looking based on purpose. Focus always on purpose. How is the morale fluctuating during these 4 phases? And how is the productivity of the entire team fluctuating? You've got to be really on par as a leader to manage with the different leadership styles as you observe that kind of information. And so it's really important for us to start with team chartering. So many of you probably understand team chartering and somehow you're doing it, but it's really important for us to start off with, if you are creating a new team, even if you have an existing team, clarify the roles. Clarify the norms of behaviors. How do you communicate? How do you make decisions? How do you give each other feedback? And how do you agree to work with each other? What are the words that you accept in the team when you discuss, and what are the words and sentences you will never accept? How do you show up accountability? How do you measure success working with each other? So that needs to be clarified, because if that's not clarified as an entire team involved, if it's just top down, you're not going to have an engaging team. And so the passion disappears. So here, it's really important for us to look at, as leaders, when we're leading a team, what are our natural tendencies? And if you are observing the communication in your teams, what are their natural tendencies? And team members are all very different people. No 2 people are the same. So are they using a lot of candor or too low candor? Candor is really telling their truth, is being honest about their opinions. Or are they hiding? Or are they too aggressive? And are you having too much curiosity or very low curiosity? If you're having too much curiosity, then you're really listening, you're shutting up, but you're not saying what you think. So that's not good either, right? Because everybody needs your opinion and your voice. You are important, otherwise you're not hired. And if you have too low curiosity, that means that you're probably overbearing in the team during discussions. You are the big boys in the discussion. So it's important for us to find the sweet spot in those tendencies. You need both. You need candor and curiosity, but you need to find that sweet spot. That's how you apply it in the team constellation, so that you can actually sustain that high performance. And when you're looking at high performance, at some point, when you reach that high performance, the team is actually sharing the leadership. You actually can't see who is the leader anymore, even if the leader is present in the room. And so I'm talking about a hierarchical leader, because the entire team is sharing leadership. They are proactive, gelling with each other, contributing, respecting each other's opinions. It's powerful. It's really, really powerful. But that takes time, right? And that's why it takes this process that I just shared with you. So it's a continuous improvement that the leader needs to help the team refine based on studying the teams on a daily basis through observation. And so being clear from the very beginning, but throughout the entire process of aligning the team is really, really important, okay, in order to achieve high performance on teams. So the team leader's role is to provide direction and support when the team can't actually start off with themselves on that level. But then once that performance is showing up, let them lead. That's the most important thing. So on the organizational level, and that's the last level that I wanted to share with you, we're really talking about transforming the culture of the organization, right? So that's kind of like the ultimate level. And so here you involve people. It's not a top-down approach. Now, I am somebody that attracts a lot of merger and acquisitions. I've done a lot of merger and acquisitions and integration, and different kinds, different sizes of organizations across industries, but also across the part of the region. So 70% of all change initiatives actually fail. It's actually the first 2 years that they fail as well. Because what I've seen so far is that the change initiatives, depending on the size of and the impact of it, is that it's always top down. And it's always an announcement. But then the people that announce it and come up with a solution of what needs to be changed don't actually follow up and involve others. And all they do in terms of involving others is that they hire training, but that's it. And go ahead and implement it. But people, after the training, they're like, okay, you've trained me on something, but how do I connect this training back into the new vision of the organization, or based on that change that we have to go through? So therefore, it hasn't been working, and it's a waste of money and time. So people start to leave, because if you're talking about an MNC level, you're talking about matrix organizations. You're talking about multiple cultures that need a corporate or an organizational level culture and direction towards an end. And so if that is not driven by human connection and involvement, it's not going to work. It's going to be a maze. You just don't know where the end is. So there are forces that are for status quo meaning don't change anything. So those are the resistors. And there are forces that are against the status quo, which means I want to change. So there's always this pull and push situation in the organization. So we've got three types of attitudes in change. You've got resistors, the undecided, people that don't want to vote, don't know, and the advocates. So the biggest question in a change effort is, how do you bring the resistors and the undecideds into advocates? Because only then you are serving them properly. So we really pay attention to the stages of concerns, because they're predictable and they're sequential. The first two stages, which is the bottom orange, it starts with the information concern and also personal concern. Information concern is, what are we changing? Why are we changing? What's the business case for it? You know, people want to make their own decision in terms of whether I actually sign up for this particular change, even if I'm an employee. The other thing is personal concern. Am I going to have a job after this change? How is this going to impact me? And then only then, when this is clarified, we're going to be onboarded and we're going to say, okay, fine. So how can I help? How can I implement this? And so forth. But then if you do not answer these questions and you do not involve me, no matter what type of hierarchy I am in the employee system, I am not going to be supportive. So how are you going to shift people from resistors to supporting and being advocate? So it's really important that we strategize based on framing the change, building the change, strengthening the support to move people and serve people during this period of change, and entrust them on implementing that change. So that's on the organizational level. So again, it's all very tangible stuff that we're showing you. But again, without the mindset of a servant leader, that you're really there for your people, for other people, without regarding your title, your authority, you're not going to be implementing all this, subsequent processes of this grand level, from me to others to team and to organizational level. And that's going to cost you and the organization immensely. It's all about ROI at the end as well. So it's important to have that mindset, that motivation to serve others. So Dr. Ken Blanchard is probably somebody that you know quite well. And he talks about that the culture, shifting the culture can actually happen from bottom up. It's about wanting to serve, but to lead at the same time, right? So that's why we invert the pyramid upside down, and it's possible if you actually involve people from right from the beginning on the change effort. So the best way, so many of my coaching clients have asked me, what is the best and fastest way to start servant leadership? Just put it into practice tomorrow when I go back to work. I would say just do one-on-ones. Do it frequently, because it's a quantity, you're raising the quantity of conversations and the quality of conversations. Because if you have the mindset to serve and you have the skill set to serve, that quantity of conversation is going to reduce in time, and you're going to raise that quality of interaction. So people have asked me, people have actually told me what they want in terms of behaviors. They said, I want direction, I want mentoring, I want guidance when I need it, when I have no clue what I'm doing. I also want support. I want my leader to listen to me and not just talk over me all the time, especially when I'm frustrated and I'm feeling stuck. I want to have that better connection with my leader. I want to share that I've got challenges with another colleague, so that combination is really important. And therefore, leaders really need to be developed. But then the people also need to be developed. And mind you, we're really talking about that operational segment of the leadership, but also the employees, right? So that we are able to create a common language. Now, let me share with you very, very quickly, because we're running out of time, what Blanchard has researched. Again, these are the figures that I wanted to show you. We went in and we looked at what are the key behaviors across the globe, that people are really craving for specifically. So we looked at the key behaviors of direction and support. And because people have complained about lack of feedback, lack of listening, lack of facilitating problem solving, and lack of direction, we went and we looked at these behaviors. And so what we found is that these behaviors actually build direction, build competence when people have no clue and they're just stuck. And supportive behaviors build commitment. And when we look at that, based on academic research, they are saying the same thing in terms of their antecedents. When you're empowering people by listening, by standing back, by humility and authenticity, but actually at the same time you're developing people through direction when they need it, you are creating that affect that creates that optimal motivation for people to work with you. And so the study findings are saying that when behaviors are given to people when they need it in terms of direction and support, that creates a fit. And 9 out of 10 of those 600 people actually replied that when they find that fit, they feel positive in relation to the leaders, but also they feel that their job, the positive work intentions increase as well. And so they start to trust the leader more and more. And so the implications is that, in talent development, when you're looking at developing them, but also people development, is that quantity of conversation and dialogue needs to increase. And also the quality and the style of leadership needs to be adapted to the need of your employee that is working with you. So what we recommend out of that research, based on those behaviors findings, is that you look for programs that provide that combination of direction and support. Because those are the combination of direction of support behaviors that build that competence and the commitment for the people. But also bear in mind that once you teach the leaders the skill, what's going to happen is that if you do not champion daily practice, managers will inappropriately actually go back to their old behaviors. If they used to delegate too much and it's not appropriate to delegate because people are not ready, then people get lost. If you are overbearing as a leader, you are, more of a command and control, and people actually don't need that from you, then that's overbearing as well, right? So just bear in mind that you observe this in your organizations, that people need to champion a culture by practicing the good behaviors. We have also learned over the years that leadership behaviors are multiple. They're not just one leadership behavior or style fitting all. Because, through situational leadership, through SL2, we have actually had a lot of feedback saying that when you look at how people are performing, you need different behaviors, different flexible behaviors over time to help them build that competence and commitment. So I am not going to talk too much about this, but basically one of the fastest way is to look at SL2 model, which then it looks at the 4 leadership styles. And we are really creating a common language with your employees and the leaders at the same time, because then you can manage them and influence all around as well. Now, again, I just remind you that more than 50% of organizations that we've worked with, and every year we impact 2 million organizations, More than 50% of organizations or organization leaders in organizations are not using 4 leadership styles. And that's actually a problem. Why? Because they're not listening. They might be only telling. And so what actually happens if you're looking at the critical task distribution in any organization that we've actually researched, the middle part, 25% plus 50%, 75 to 85% of people still need to be developed. They're not an expert in what they're doing. So when that shows up, this basically tells you, you really need to switch leadership styles at every moment when they need you at different situations. Because the return on investment on hiring somebody actually starts at D3. And D3 is when people are competent and they're starting to have that motivation and confidence to work. And so again, Dr. Ken Blanchard tells us, if you have the mindset that you want to serve, that's a really good start, but you've got to put it into practice with some skills. And so in SL2 model, we teach people how to match the different leadership styles and be flexible with proper behaviors, leadership behaviors. What would you learn? You would be learning 3 skills, 6 conversations purely for partnering, because you're not using your title or authority. You're really, as a leader, serving others by using the right behaviors appropriately. We're talking about goal setting, diagnosing, and matching the different leadership styles for alignment. And when you're aligning, people know what to expect from you. And so you're creating that clarity for managing your teams. So SL2 model is all about creating that partnership with your people, because you're not doing it to somebody, but you're working with somebody. So in the summary, we're really, as leaders, we need to be clear on our goals, our personal service statement, how to work with us individually first. It starts with us, with me, team level, and department or organizational level. We also looked at how to build competence and commitment on the goal or task level, but we also paid attention on, it's important to look at different leadership styles because it's not a one fit all, and there's different behaviors that you need to be working with, supporting, and also in giving people direction only when they need it. And so there's a uniqueness to what we can share with you in terms of the skill set. Please talk to Yogesh, Amar, and Raju for the skills, because we kind of like an expert in implementing the skills of servant leadership in multiple organizations. And I'm here to really share multiple examples that I personally have worked with, and some of my team members as well. So these are some of the organizations that we've worked with in the past in implementing the concept of servant leadership, but also integrating the skills and the behaviors of servant leadership through multiple programs, but also SL2 into these organizations. And we've very successfully changed cultures in conjunction, in collaboration with these organizations.
Maria,
so I was wondering whether there are any questions.
Yeah, Maria, this is Amar here. I hope you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me a little bit of an insight into companies like Lego and HP, Procter & Gamble, Nissan,
Sure.
Dyson, because these companies are also here in India. So what was your experience there? A little bit brief about it. That would be very nice.
Okay, so Lego, for example, is a company that we're still working with for many, many years. So Lego, that is from Denmark, right? So the leadership style of the corporate Denmark, Lego, is very hands-free. Like, they're like, think you're a new person in the company, so think about how you want to create your own goals. And then everybody is lost because there's no direction. But it works in that culture. When they came to China to set up a plant, different parts of Asia, it was a more directional attitude. So they really clashed. And so they came to us and they said, oh my gosh, we don't know how to manage our plants in different parts of the world because they don't behave like the Danish people do. And so when we give them a goal, they don't know how to proceed. They're waiting for us, but they're supposed to be experts in doing the production. Why are they waiting for us to tell them what to do? So there was a clash of leadership style, and it wasn't serving their people. It wasn't serving the plants that were supposed to manufacture for them. You see what I'm saying? So we went in and we we adjusted those leadership styles and we gave them the skills and the mindset to work with each other. Today, they're flourishing. They're opening more plants everywhere and they're growing.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. And I think we got another 30 minutes to go for the session. So I think, we also have question and answers with questions, which Rajul has prepared. So please let us know as to when we can ask these questions to you and Yogesh.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. And maybe Yogesh want to come up back into the camera because we're going to be collaborating on the next segment.
Excellent. Over to you, Rajul and Yogesh.
Thank you very much, Amar. Thank you very much, Maria. This was a very spirited presentation, and the passion just shows when you talk of how to build these capabilities in organizations, how do organizations develop their own sense of servant leadership and its execution. I had a few questions. The first question, so if Yogesh sir, I could ask you, we are talking of leaders talking about or making their subordinates experience servant leadership. Now, in the event that they have themselves not experienced it, how do you think it is possible, and if at all it is possible, for them to make their subordinates or their peer group experience authentic servant leadership? Won't it be a facade then?
Yeah, so I think, Raju, that's a very, very interesting and deep question which you have asked. And it also goes back to what we saw at the start and Maria was re-emphasizing during her presentation, that it starts with self. You cannot do servant leadership to others if you do not clarify your own values, your personal mission, and align your behaviors with that. Otherwise, you will be seen through, you'll be putting up a facade, as you said, and you will not be successful. And in our experience, what we have seen is not only in India, but in Asia, across the globe, is that is the most difficult part to do, because it requires shaking up your inside, changing your own core. If you're not oriented like that, changing your own core. So you may look at behaviors, but until and unless those behaviors are not linked to values, you will not be successful as a servant leader. So just to answer your question, in summary, what I'm saying is that servant leadership is not only skill, it is mindset and skill set. And when mindset has to start with self, my own values, my own introspection, and then decide what behaviors I will, showcase to show the world that I'm living these values. And there should not be any gap in, I use a word called gap in audio visual. Audio visual gap is that I'm saying something which is audio people are hearing, and I'm doing something which people are watching. And if you're not authentic leadership, if you're not defined your values, if you're not aligned your behaviors, people will be able to see that audio visual gap. The audio and visual of a leader in servant leadership need to be aligned. That's the way we look at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Maria, anything you want to add to that?
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. I would have answered, similarly, but then Yogesh is so experienced. I'm really grateful that you did, Yogesh.
So I have a subsequent question to that, Yogesh sir. So, often we find that there are values which are written as a statement. They are shared in a fable, yet they are not practiced. So they are written at the entrance of an organization as a statement which people need to live by. However, it's not defined appropriately in action terms. It's written more as an intent statement. So how does a person understand how to bridge that gap?
So, you're asking great questions. I don't know whether they came in the chat box or this is you are kind of
just a question.
Yeah, all right. So, it's an interesting question because that is the responsibility of a leader to keep on revisiting and demonstrate those values in action. You rightly said that most of the organizations have got great set of values. They're hung on the wall, they're posters, they're reminders and all that stuff it goes on, which is actually not connecting to the core of the individual or not being communicated very regularly or not being demonstrated or not being measured, not doing value audits as we call it. So, this is first part of it is when you're looking at, you want to inculcate or build up a value-based culture. We all need to be clear about what values we're talking about. Now, here you remember we talked about these values at individual level to be a servant leader. A similar exercise organizations do, they hire a consultant or a team of consultants and come out with these values. But many times the leaders themselves are not fully engaged, designing that value system. And that is where it has to come from the very top, where people are going to, strategically run the organization. And then, of course, actions and link to the understanding or the way we are deciphering those values. So in sum and substance, what I'm saying here is that the values, even if they are not demonstrated in terms of action, I mean, described in terms of action, but if they are demonstrated by the leaders day in, day out, then they tend to cascade. But the problem is, again, I was saying earlier, audio visual gap. Value is integrity, and in the crunch moment, leader behaves differently. Or he says that you go and do it and I'll take care of it. Value is, compassion or whatever, customer centricity. And in the time of crisis, leaders say, forget about this customer, we will take care of it. So those are the moment, we call them as crucial moment in leadership journey. Those are the moment when you, whatever way you decide or you act, you're leaving a larger, longer, lingering impact on the concerned team member. So it's more about how I behave as a leader as compared to what I say about values, and that's where the audio visual need to match with each other. Thank you, Raju.
Thank you very much. Maria, anything you want to share from your experience?
No, I mean, it's perfect what Yogesh is saying.
Oh, wonderful. So, Maria, there's a question that came on the chat, and it was Mr. Tiwari, if I'm not incorrect, from IOCL, who asked that. So, he asked a question: if you have an existing successful model of leadership, which is existing in your organization, how and where do you begin to emphasize the importance of servant leadership?
So servant leadership begins with the mindset. So it's really important for you to look at, and again, you haven't disclosed the model. So it's less about the model. It's really picking out what is working right now in terms of behaviors and really dive deep inside. How are you measuring that is working? So you need to be very clear about what are the measures of working that is working. So it's got to be demonstrated behaviors that are already ingrained and embedded in the organization. And people are saying, yes, we like these behaviors, and therefore we're going to proceed. So if you have 10 behaviors, only 3 are working. So only those 3 are working, not 10 are working. So we've got to be careful in terms of measurable behaviors. And then you need to look at, are people behaving very similar to what Yogesh was saying? Are people behaving because I'm forced to? Otherwise, there's a subsequent tangible consequence in terms of their career, in terms of reprimanding or losing their jobs, or is it because it's directly linked to their employee passion, in their motivation, in their really wanting to behave well towards each other? So I think there's a little bit of work there in terms of defining what is the measure of it's working, and then really go deep. Like I would go deep inside and say, is it the mindset that has really changed, or is it because it's been forced? So I would go that path.
But isn't it just a link question? Isn't it very difficult to pinpoint the mindset? How do you decipher the mindset and the skill set aspect of it? Because the mindset has a huge bearing on each step of the skill set. And it really reflects in the way you operate at each level. You may define a process, but if the human being in the process is not addressed appropriately, how do you ensure that you decipher the two differences?
That's a great question, because that's a follow-up question. So one of the ways to pay attention to is it's the engagement, right? So how do you actually add engagement? It's the daily behavior of satisfaction, the daily behavior of productivity, the daily behavior of not leaving. Attrition rate is not high. All that, those tangible quantitative and qualitative measures need to be observed. So it takes a bit of time for leaders, no matter whether it's HR leaders or business leaders, in collaboration, working as partners to really look at, this is working, this is not working. So there's something that we need to shift in the culture. So that's a brilliant question. Another way is getting a consultant to come in and interview people, because it's neutral, right? Interview people and say, hey, are you forced, or are you really feeling motivated to behave this way? Because then you probably want to revise. When you have critical mass, saying that these are just forced behaviors and it's anonymous, people feel safe to show up with their voices, you will probably start to look at what are the behaviors that you really want, and therefore how do we actually shift the culture a little bit based on those behaviors and values.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to clarify. So it may seem like a very simple question, but it has a deeper meaning. So I believe servant leadership has little to do with a model, and more to do with how you operate within any model.
Correct.
So isn't it then effectively more to do with how people within the model or how people within any construct behave? How do I experience people within the construct of whatever they are doing? So it's irrespective of what happens. So
Absolutely.
anything that you would like to share more on this?
Yeah, so it starts with the self, right? It starts
Yeah.
with how do I feel about serving others? Because if I'm resistant and there's no good purpose why I'm going to want to serve others, that construct is already crooked. Does it make sense, Raju? And so sometimes you might say, I've actually done a lot of research on servant leadership. There are people that say to me in my interviews, because I do qualitative research. And I'm in the process of doing one for servant leadership. I've been interviewing a lot of people, a lot of leaders, line managers in organizations. So I'm actually researching from the follower perspective instead of on the leader perspective. Because we're doing a 180, right? So basically, if you ask the follower, do you respect your leader because this guy is showing up as a servant leader? My interviewees are saying yes and no because. So you see what I'm saying? So I am finding out the following things. People are saying servant leadership has got to do with trust and respect. And if you don't give that to me first and I'm your follower, why am I going to give it to you? So regardless the skill model, and I agree with you, that's really smart question, the way you put it. Regardless on the model that provides you the skill, that could fit in like Lego. But the mindset, if you don't have that mindset, how are you going to drive that? Because the mindset drives your motivation, right? And then you can put the skills. Now, in my research, which I've published, I compared a lot of models. And one of the models that is the closest in behaviors on the skill set is actually SL2. And therefore, I decided to do this webinar because it's so interesting, right? And I'm a big fan of transformational leadership. I'm a big fan of authentic, empathic leadership. There is in the Chinese geography, so Greater China, they're very transactional leadership, right? So you've got to respect all because it's useful in different cultures. But when you want to use one on a corporate wide, and we have a track record of success in using corporate-wide across geographies, it's only been, in my humble experience, only been SL2. So I just wanted to share that and people to think about it, that's all.
So Yogesh sir, you coach quite a lot. You've done coaching assignments all across the globe, and you're one of those revered coaches all across. We all look up to you. When we are working individually with executives, it's almost akin to working with their entire organization, because the culture of an organization, I'm sure Maria you would also agree, it draws a lot of value from the person who's leading the organization, and people start to emulate the leadership that they see demonstrated by the allegedly most successful person in that organization, which is the CEO or the head of the organization. So in that, how important do you think it is that there's no percolation challenge, there's no percolation dilution of understanding of how people experience servant leadership? And how do you think working with the CEO, though Maria spoke at length about inverting the pyramid and people right at the front experiencing and demonstrating those the etho of care and servitude to the customers outside, how do you think working internally the pyramid goes back to the original self? Because if people do not experience servant leadership internally, how can they make others experience it? So
So, yeah, that's a great question, Rajul. And before I respond to that, let me just share an experience which happened a couple of days ago when we were asking the senior leaders, what is your understanding of servant leadership? And actually, I do not know whether he said jokingly, one of them ended up saying that I've got a couple of servants at home and I make one of them leaders of all of them. And I was aghast when I heard that. I said, wow, this is your understanding of servant leadership. And he said, yes, I've heard this word and this is what it means to me. Now, it's a very interesting piece. But the point here I'm trying to say is that if a CEO has to lead, servant leadership concept, the very first thing he or she needs to do is forget he or she is a CEO, because so far so he or she continues to carry that title around her shoulders and have those wings around her or him that I am the CEO. It is not servant leadership, because as we just talked about during our discussions, that servant leadership is first being thinking as a servant, then as a leader, not as a leader and then as a servant. So but the titles block us there. Many times when we talk to senior people on one-to-one coaching also, titles block them. They feel so alone, they feel vulnerable, and they feel so kind of vulnerable that they can't even talk about their concerns to others because they feel scared, they feel threatened, they feel unsafe, not only psychologically unsafe, many times physically unsafe also, if you're in industrial relations or factory setup, etc. So what I'm trying to say here is a kind of forgetting about who I am as a designation part of it and try to discover who I am as a person. And that is where the journey of my personal values and my behaviors and how they get aligned. I remember almost 8 to 9 years ago, I first time attended this workshop in San Diego when Dr. Ken Blanchard was personally running it along with Marshall Goldsmith there. And they said something very interesting. They said, if you are looking at being a servant leader, it was a one-day session and it's one of the greatest program I attended for one day when Ken is in the room and Marshall is in the room together. And then they said the 4H principle, and Marshall was advocating it very strongly. They talked about head, heart, hands, and habit. As a leader, what is your head saying? What is your heart saying? Because it's emotions and rational both. And hand says, are you doing it daily basis, on regular basis? And habit is, are you carrying it on and on and on? So this is a very, very powerful. They use this 4H kind of a servant leadership concept there. And somewhere I still have those participant workbook with me. If you want more details, I can dig it out and share with you. But the point what they were trying to make is, as today we are talking about mindset and skill set, it is about your head, it is about your heart, it is about what you're doing with your hands on daily basis and what kind of habits you're displaying over a period of time. But the fundamental thing is, forget that I'm a CEO if you really want to create a culture of servant leadership. Until and unless you don't do that, forget about servant leadership. These are the only thing I want to say. Thank you very much.
So it's either or.
Yeah, I mean, they can't be going hand in hand that I carry myself as a CEO and expect myself to be a servant leadership. You need to somewhere, need to look at what is more important at that point in time. Maria may like to add to this.
Yeah, I mean, I did this, right? Can you see me? It's amazing.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you.
Yogesh is amazing. Well, here's the thing, right? And I'll tell you why I agree with Yogesh. It's very, very simple. Servant leaders are authentic. So authentic doesn't mean, oh, I'm angry, I'm going to yell at you. And that's not being authentic. That's just being rude. Okay? But authenticity is from the heart, looking at yourself, like Yogesh was saying, you're looking at me first. I'm looking at myself. Who am I? Do I know what I'm doing? And if I don't, somebody else is better than me. I'm going to let this person take over, even if I'm the CEO. Why do I have to know everything? So why do I have to put everything on my shoulders? The servant leader is also humble. I have the title, but I don't have to show off. I am okay to tell others that I don't know how to do it. So that's why you hire people. You have an expert to help you do it. But then they get fulfillment when they're succeeding and you let them proceed, right? So Yogesh talked about something very important. As you go higher, you feel more isolated. But that's because you do not use the resources beneath you. You have a team of people that you can be vulnerable about. You have a team of people that you can trust. That's why you continue to have them and not fire them. You have a team of people that can give you personal feedback as a leader yourself. Why don't you interact with them that way and forget your title?
Yeah.
So position power is irrelevant. Position power is only relevant at the beginning of the organization to set structures, vision and mission and direction, but then afterwards, let others lead. So that's where I feel I completely concur with what Yogesh was saying, because a servant leader is humble, is showing humility, authenticity, but also building that connection with your people, and it's regardless your position power.
So thank you very much, Maria. We have a question from Devendra in the chat box, and he's referring to 4H also relates to level 5 leadership. I'm just, I'm thinking that possibly he's referring to the leadership grid where we're talking of 5-5. So I don't still know. Would you like to respond to that, Yogesh sir?
Yeah, level 5 leadership is, talked about in Good to Great book.
Yeah.
Where the typical example they use is that if something good happens, I'm looking outside the window to give credit to somebody. And if something bad happens, I'm looking in the mirror, to find what could I have done differently. So yeah, there is some kind of connection, not that there's a linear correlation, but there's some kind of connection. What both are saying is that reflect inside, and one is talking about being a more authentic self person, other is talking about giving, sharing credit. That be so humble that be ready to give credit, level 5 leadership, and of course, be ready to take all the blame onto yourself. So yes, there's something common, but they are not absolutely, in a relationship with each other.
Linear relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rajul, one quick point from my side. Level 5 also talks to you, adding to what Yogesh was saying from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, talks about personal humility and professional will.
Sure. Thank you. So, Maria, I think a very important point that Yogesh has shared at the moment when he answered the question about power distancing. So,
Yes.
of course, he did not refer to power distancing as a concept. So he was talking precisely of that. He said that a CEO can't really be operating as a CEO. So I'm aware that you've done some comprehensive work on power distancing. If you could share a little about that and throw some insights on that.
Yeah, thank you for segueing to, so this is a website that all of you can go. If you go to Google and you type Hofstadter's Insights on the top left corner on that menu. Now, I go there because I'm very interested in looking at, I'm a researcher, right? So I'm very interested in looking at how do different leadership styles or leadership models fit into cultures. So when I was growing up, I was the why is this like that? So my parents used to shut up, and I'm like, I won't shut up. I'm asking why? So today I'm a researcher. So I'm very curious about cultures, and I lived in 8 different countries and worked with multiple organizations in different countries. And I went and I studied a lot of different Asian cultures with the Western culture. Now, I specifically for this presentation, I wanted to, do the maximum contrast between the United States, because servant leadership comes from the United States, and India. And if you look at from the further left side, you've got on the bottom written power distance, right? Like Raju was mentioning. And then you've got the next one is individualism. Now, so anything that is above 50 in this Hofstadter's Insights cultural dynamics, it means it's too much. Yeah, it means it's significant. So if you look at India is blue, India on power distance is 77. So that's 27 points higher than 50. It means high, right? So power distance means what? Power distance based on Hofstadter's Insights is defined as we like power in our country, in our population. We accept power, we accept authority as soon as we are born, which basically means it's quite natural to have somebody above you as soon as you are born. And so therefore, it builds the culture of that society, that geography in India as it is. So you can see by titles, you can see by the way you are greeted, you can see by your seniority, etc., etc. So these cultures, not just India, right? So these cultures, people respect authority, titles, position, power, seniority based on age. So a person could be older, but just the fact that they are older, they're not necessarily a good person, but just the fact that they are older, they have to be respected, not because this person was a good person. Yeah, so it has that tendency. So this is kind of like 77 points or 77%, right?
Yeah.
Now compared to United States, it's, hey, we don't give a dang about power. It's below 50, it's 40, and it's like, yeah, if I got it, very well. If I don't have it, I'm going to go 5 steps above me to talk to the CEO if I'm not happy with my leader. So that's United States. So again, based on Hofstadter's research, that's what he came out with. So let's look at the individualism, which is quite interesting. Individualism on India, which is the blue, it's 48%. It's below 50. Individualism is very low, which basically means, hey, whatever I do, there's an impact on others. We have to think of the bigger picture of the collective. We are a collective society. There's a consequence. Whatever I do, if I sneeze, somebody else will be affected.
Infected. Yeah.
Right. So if I say something bad, it will hurt this person. It will hurt the family when this person goes back because he or she is going to be in bad mood. So we are collective in India. But in individualistic countries, and in this case, I picked USA, look, they're almost 100, they're 91. It's like, I can say whatever I like. I'm being authentic. Well, our definition of servant leadership authentic is not that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just being rude. You know what I mean? So when you work with other cultures and when you are a multinational organization, you want to apply a particular leadership model, be careful. I would encourage you to go to Hofstadter's Insights to understand the culture before you actually implement the change on behaviors.
Thank you very much for that insight, Maria.
Most welcome.
So, thanks. So, Yogesh sir, just a question to you. If you had to define servant leadership, and if you wanted people to take those 2 sentences away, how would you explain servant leadership as you see it?
Well, you have seen the expert's definition there. You have heard the researcher, for last 90 minutes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm expert enough to add any new definition to this. But I think the word themselves are quite self-explanatory in that sense, learn to be a servant before you learn to be a leader. Because, this is about helping others to achieve their objectives, helping others, being sensible and sensitive to what others are trying to accomplish and help them in doing that. That is what servant leadership is all about in simple definition for me. Thank you.
So, very, very profound. Be sensible and sensitive to what others are trying to achieve and helping them achieve that. Thank you very much for that. Maria, if I were to ask you for an explanation in 2 sentences, given the depth of understanding that you have on this subject, how would you like to explain servant leadership to all of us?
So on a personal level, the way I define servant leadership for me is, do I love others? It's actually a question, right? So do I love others? And do I love others enough to also love myself back? Trust myself to love others. And sometimes it's very hard. And so when I come from a mindset of love, I serve. I want to help others. I will grow others. I will give unconditionally. But on the practical level, I would look at 3 genuine, basic foundational behaviors. I would look at, to what extent am I as a leader? First, I look at me first, right? Am I as a leader being humble? Like what Yogesh was saying, throw away your title. To what extent am I being authentic towards others? To what extent am I standing back and giving them direction only when they need it, not because I feel like I need to, and giving them support when they need it, and proactively just be there for them, open door. So that's like the objective 5 behaviors that I would look at. These 3, right? I'm going to stand back and wait and observe. Am I going to need to give direction or support? Am I humble enough? And am I authentic, genuinely authentic, to be there for others and appreciate others? Because servant leadership is all about appreciating others. If you don't appreciate others, you can't serve. And that's why I talk about love. And Ken also talks about love. So that would be it.
Thank you very much, Maria. Amar, any closing comments from you? Any thoughts that you would like to share?
Yeah, thanks for that, Rajul. I think it was a great session. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Yogesh, for your insights and your experience. Needless to say, you're the fountainhead as far as this particular subject is concerned, both of you. I really thank all the participants who attended this session. A very insightful session. I hope you had a lot to take away. In case you want to reach out to us, you want to get to know more about servant leadership and the other follow-ups which we have associated to servant leadership, please do touch base with our people, our team. They are very much in touch with you. So we look forward serving you. We look forward listening to you and understanding the issues you may have or suggestions you may have. And we can work as your real, genuine learning partners. Once again, Maria, thank you very much. Yogesh, thank you very much. Rajul, fantastic hosting. Very well done. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, team.
If
Thank you very much, everyone.
If you want to be in touch, just go to my LinkedIn. I've got a lot of articles there. So you can read. It's for free. So
the research are coming back.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for staying late as well. I really appreciate it. And thank you, team.
Thank you very much, Maria.
Rajul, and Amar for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
everyone.
much, Yogesh. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks, Maria. Bye-bye to all of us. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.